Hi, everybody. It's Carmen Nardini. I am going to be reading today 1 Samuel 6 through 10. Um, I am making up for a missed one for Pastor Paul. So, 1 Samuel 6. The ark remained in the Philistine country for 7 months in all. Then the Philistines called for their priests and diviners and asked them, "What shall we do about the ark of God? What sort of gift shall we send with it when we return it to its own land?" "Yes, send it back with a gift," they were told. "Send a guilt offering so that the plague will stop. Then, if it doesn't, you will know God didn't send the plague upon you after all." "What guilt offering shall we send?" they asked. And they were told, "Send 5 gold models of the tumor caused by the plague, and 5 gold models of the rats that have ravaged the whole land, the capital cities and villages alike. If you send these gifts and then praise the God of Israel, perhaps he will stop persecuting you and your God. Don't be stubborn and rebellious as Pharaoh and the Egyptians were. They wouldn't let Israel go until God had destroyed them with dreadful plagues. Now build a new cart and hitch it 2 cows that have just had calves, cows that never before had been yoked, and shut their calves away from them in the barn. Place the ark of God on the cart beside a chest containing the gold models of the rats and tumors, and let the cows go wherever they want to. If they cross the border of our land and go into Beth Shemesh, then you will know that it was God who brought this great evil upon us. If they don't, but return to their calves, then we will know that the plague was simply a coincidence and was not sent by God at all. So these instructions were carried out. 2 fresh cows were hitched to the cart, and their calves were shut up in the barns. Then the ark of the Lord and the chest containing the gold rats and tumors were placed upon the cart. And sure enough, the cows went straight along the road toward Bethsheba, lowing as they went, and the Philistine mares followed them as far as the border of Bethshemesh. The people of Beth Shemesh were reaping wheat in the valley, and when they saw the ark, they went wild with joy. The cart came into the field of a man named Joshua and stopped beside a large rock. So the people broke up the wood of the cart for a fire and killed the cows and sacrificed them to the Lord as a burnt offering. Several men of the tribe of Levi lifted the ark and the chest containing the golden rats and tumors from the cart and laid them on the rock. And many burnt offerings and sacrifices were offered to the Lord that day by the men of Shemesh. After the 5 Philistine mayors had watched for a while, they returned to Ekron the same day. 5 gold models of tumors, which had been sent by the Philistines as a guilt offering to the Lord, were gifts from the mayors of the capital cities: Ashdod, Gaza, Ashkelon, Gath, and Ekron. The gold rats were to placate God for the other Philistine cities, both the fortified cities and the country villages controlled by the 5 capitals. By the way, that large rock at Beth Shemesh can still be seen in the field of Joshua. But the Lord killed 70 of the men of Beth Shemesh because they looked into the ark, and the people mourned because of the many people whom the Lord had killed. "Who is able to stand before Jehovah, this holy God?" they cried out. "Where can we send the ark from here?" So they sent messengers to the people of Kirath Jearim and told them that the Philistines had brought back the ark of the Lord. "Come and get it," they begged. Chapter 7. So the men of Kirath Jearim came and took the ark to the hillside home of Abinadab and installed his son Elzar to be in charge of it. The ark remained there for 20 years, and during that time all Israel was in sorrow because the Lord had seemingly abandoned them. At that time Samuel said to them, "If you are really serious about wanting to return to the Lord, get rid of your foreign gods and your Ashtaroth idols. Determined to obey only the Lord, then he will rescue you from the Philistines." So they destroyed their idols of Baal and Ashtaroth and worshipped only the Lord. Then Samuel told them, "Come to Mizpah, all of you, and I will pray to the Lord for you." So they gathered there, and in a great ceremony drew water from the well and poured it out before the Lord. They also went without food all day as a sign of sorrow for their sins. So it was Mizpah that Samuel became, it was at Mizpah that Samuel became Israel's judge. When the Philistine leaders heard about the great crowds at Mizpah, they mobilized their army and advanced. The Israelites were badly frightened when they learned that the Philistines were approaching. Plead with God to save us, they begged Samuel. So Samuel took a suckling lamb and offered it to the Lord as a whole burnt offering and pleaded with him to help Israel. And the Lord responded. Just as Samuel was sacrificing the burnt offering, the Philistines arrived for battle. But the Lord spoke with a mighty voice of thunder from heaven, and they were thrown into confusion, and the Israelites routed them and chased them from Mizpah to Bethkar, killing them all along the way. Samuel then took a stone and placed it between Mizpah and Jeshanah and named it Ebenezer, meaning the stone of help. For he said, the Lord has certainly helped us. So the Philistines were subdued and didn't invade Israel again at that time, because the Lord was against them throughout the remainder of Samuel's lifetime. The Israeli cities between Ekron and Gath, which had been conquered by the Philistines, were now returned to Israel. For the Israel army rescued them from the Philistine captors, and there was peace between Israel and the Amorites in those days. Samuel continued as Israel's judge for the remainder of his life. He rode circuit annually, setting up his court first at Bethel, then Gilgal, then Mizpah. And cases of dispute were brought to him in each of those three cities from all the surrounding territory. Then he would come back to Ramah, for his home was there, and he would hear the cases there too. And he built an altar to the Lord of Ramah. Chapter 8. In his old age, Samuel retired and appointed his sons as judges in his place. Joel and Abijah, his oldest sons, held court in Beersheba. But they were not like their father, for they were greedy for money. They accepted bribes and were very corrupt in the administration of justice. Finally, the leaders of Israel met in Ramah to discuss the matter with Samuel. They told him that since his retirement, things hadn't been the same, for his sons were not good men. Give us a king like all the other nations have, they pleaded. Samuel was terribly upset and went to the Lord for advice. Do as they say, the Lord replied, for I am the one they are rejecting, not you. They don't want me to be their king any longer. Ever since I brought them from Egypt, they have continually forsaken me and followed other gods. And now they are giving you the same treatment. Do as they ask, but warn them about what it will be like to have a king. So Samuel told the people what the Lord had said. If you insist on having a king, he will conscript your sons and make them run before his chariots. Some will be made to lead his troops into battle, while others will be slave laborers. They will be forced to plow in the royal fields and harvest his crops without pay, and make his weapons and chariot equipment. He will take your daughters from you and force them to cook and bake and make perfumes for him. He will take away the best of your fields and vineyards and olive groves and give them to his friends. He will take a tenth of your harvest and distribute it to his favorites. He will demand your slaves and the finest of your youth and will use your animals for his personal gain. He will demand a tenth of your flocks, and you shall be his slaves. You will shed bitter tears because of this king you are demanding, but the Lord will not help you. But the people refused to listen to Samuel's warning. Even so, we still want a king, they said, for we want to be like the nations around us. He will govern us and lead us to battle. So Samuel told the Lord what the people had said, and the Lord replied again. So Samuel agreed and sent the men home again. 9. Kish was a rich, influential man from the tribe of Benjamin. He was the son of Abiel, grandson of Zerorah, great-grandson of Bechorath, and great-great-grandson of Hapiath. His son Saul was the most handsome man in Israel, and he was head and shoulders taller than anyone else in the land. One day Kish's donkeys strayed away, so he sent Saul and a servant to look for them. They traveled all through the hill country of Ephraim, the land of Shalisha and Shalaim area, and the entire land of Benjamin, but couldn't find them anywhere. Finally, after searching in the land of Zuph, Saul said to the servant, "Let's go home. By now my father will be more worried about us than about the donkeys." But the servant said, "I've just thought of something. There is a prophet who lives here in the city. He is held in high honor by all the people because everything he says comes true. Let's go and find him, and perhaps he can tell us where the donkeys are." "But we don't have anything to pay him with," Saul replied. "Even our food has gone, and we don't have a thing to give him." "Well," the servant said, "I have $1. We can at least offer it to him and see what happens." "All right," Saul agreed. "Let's try it." So they started into the city where the prophet lived. As they were climbing a hill toward the city, they saw some young girls going out to draw water and asked them if they knew whether the seer was in town. In those days, prophets were called seers. "Let's go and ask the seer," people would say, rather than "let's go and ask the prophet," as we would say now. "Yes," they replied. "Stay right on this road. He lives just inside the city gates. He has just arrived back from a trip to take part in a public sacrifice up on the hill. So hurry, because he'll probably be leaving about the time you get there. The guests can't eat until he arrives and blesses the food." So they went into the city, and as they were entering the gates, they saw Samuel coming out toward them to go up the hill. The Lord had told Samuel the previous day, "About this time tomorrow I will send you a man from the land of Benjamin. You are to anoint him as the leader of my people. He will save them from the Philistines, for I have looked down on them in mercy and have heard their cry." When Samuel saw Saul, the Lord said, "That's the man I told you about. He will rule my people." Just then Saul approached Samuel and asked, "Can you please tell me where the seer's house is?" "I am the seer," Samuel replied. "Go on up the hill ahead of me, and we'll eat together. In the morning I will tell you what you want to know and send you on your way. And don't worry about those donkeys that were lost 3 days ago, for they have been found. And anyway, you own all the wealth of Israel now." "Pardon me, sir," Saul replied. "I'm from the tribe of Benjamin, the smallest in Israel, and my family is the least important of all the families of the tribe. You must have the wrong man." Then Samuel took Saul and his servant into the great hall and placed them at the head of the table, honoring them above the 30 special guests. Samuel then instructed the chef to bring Saul the choicest cut of meat, the piece that had been set aside for the guest of honor. So the chef brought it in and placed it before Saul. "Go ahead and eat it," Samuel said, "for I was saving it for you even before I invited these others." So Saul ate with Samuel. After the feast, when they had returned to the city, Samuel took Saul up to the porch on the roof and talked with him there. At daybreak the next morning, Samuel called up to him, "Get up, it's time you were on your way." So Saul got up, and Samuel accompanied him to the edge of the city. When they reached the city walls, Samuel told Saul to send the servant on ahead. Then he told him, "I have received a special message from you from the Lord." 10. Then Samuel took a flask of olive oil and poured it over Saul's head and kissed him on the cheek and said, "I am doing this because the Lord has appointed you to be the king of his people Israel. When you leave me, you will see 2 men beside Rachel's tomb at Zelzah in the land of Benjamin. They will tell you that the donkeys have been found and that your father is worried about you and is asking, 'How am I to find my son?' And when you get to the oak of Tabor, you will see 3 men coming toward you who are on their way to worship God at the altar at Bethel. One will be carrying 3 young goats, another will have 3 loaves of bread, and the third will have a bottle of wine. They will greet you and offer you 2 of the loaves, which you are to accept. After that, you will come to Gibeath Elom, also known as God's Hill, where the garrison of the Philistines is. As you arrive there, you will meet a band of prophets coming down the hill, playing a psaltery, a timbrel, a flute, and a harp, and prophesying as they come. At that time, the Spirit of the Lord will come mightily upon you, and you will prophesy with them, and you will feel and act like a different person. From that time on, your decisions should be based on whatever seems best under the circumstances, for the Lord will guide you. Go to Gilgal and wait there 7 days for me, for I will be coming to sacrifice burnt offerings and peace offerings. I will give you further instructions when I arrive." As Saul said goodbye and started to go, God gave him a new attitude, and all of Samuel's prophecies came true that day. When Saul and the servant arrived at the hill of God, they saw the prophets coming toward them, and the Spirit of God came upon him, and he too began to prophesy. When his friends heard about it, they exclaimed, "What, Saul, a prophet?" And one of the neighbors added, "With a father like his?" So that is the origin of the Proverbs. Is Saul a prophet too? When Saul had finished prophesying, he climbed the hill to the altar. Where in the world did you go? Saul's uncle asked him. And Saul replied, We went to look for the donkeys, but we couldn't find them. So we went to the prophet Samuel to ask him where they are. Oh, and what did he say? His uncle said. He said the donkeys had been found, Saul replied, but he didn't tell him that he had been anointed as king. Samuel now called a convocation of all Israel at Mizpah, and gave them this message from the Lord God. I brought you from Egypt and rescued you from the Egyptians and from all the nations that were torturing you. But although I have done so much for you, you have rejected me and have said, We want a king instead. All right, then present yourselves before the Lord by tribes and clans. So Samuel called the tribal leaders together before the Lord, and the tribe of Benjamin was chosen by sacred lot. Then he brought each family of the tribe of Benjamin before the Lord, and the family of the Matrites was chosen. And finally, the sacred lot selected Saul, the son of Kish. But when they looked at him for him, he had disappeared. So they asked the Lord, Where is he? Is he here among us? And the Lord replied, He is hiding in the baggage. So they found him and brought him out, and he stood head and shoulders above anyone else. Then Samuel said to all the people, This is the man the Lord has chosen as your king. There isn't his equal in all of Israel. And all the people shouted, Long live the king. Then Samuel told the people again what the rights and duties of a king were. He wrote them in a book and put it in a special place before the Lord. Then Samuel sent the people home again. When Saul returned to his home at Gibeah, a band of men whose hearts the Lord had touched became his constant companions. There were, however, some bums and loafers who exclaimed, How can this man save us? And they despised him and refused to bring him presents, but he took no notice. And that's all for today. Thanks for listening.